Alright, here it is. The last video of the semester. Phylum Chordata. Are you ready for this, people? I know I am. I'ma take me a big nap. Chordata. Phylum Chordata includes a large variety of organisms. Not nearly the diversity of species you see in Arthropoda, but Chordata are the big things. Phylum Chordata includes the vertebrates, and the vertebrates are the largest animals on the planet. So, let's take a look at the species we see in Phylum Chordata, or the classes of animals. We see tunicates, lancelets, fish, amphibians, reptiles and birds, and mammals, all in Chordata. So what are chordates? Well, Phylum Chordata, all the members of Phylum Chordata are bilateral. They have the full 3 tissues, and they are coelomates. They have a complete digestive tract, and they have a number of very specific traits. They have a dorsal hollow nerve cord. What is that? That's a spine. So you know the spine in us as our bony back right there. The spinal column is vertebrae stacked on each other that are hollow and have a nerve cord running through it. And that nerve cord is the dorsal hollow nerve cord. And it gives rise to the spinal cord and the brain. So, during embryonic development, you get the dorsal hollow nerve cord, and then that dorsal hollow nerve cord becomes the spinal cord and brain. Let's see, I think I can pull up a picture that would be good here. Let's throw in embryonic there so we can get an image of development here. And here we go. This is a good cross section. This is the neural tube, that hollow tube there. And you can see it's hollow there. And I'd really like to get an image of the development of that. So I'm going to use some terminology. Neural crest development. This should give it to us. Here we go. So that dorsal hollow nerve cord there is ectodermal tissue. So it's tissue that's on the outside. And here's how it becomes what it is. Here's the regular epidermis. And then this is what we call a neural plate. And this develops on that ball of cells during embryonic development. Remember when we were talking about gastrula? Well, as that gastrula develops into further more complex ball or sphere of cells, you get the development of a neural plate on the surface, right? And that's that purple right here. And then what happens is the neural plate will fold inward. And then the top will come together, and so this is that neural fold, and then it comes together, and we have the neural tube. And so this right here, this green neural crest and the purple neural tube, is what's going to develop into the spinal cord and the brain. So there's the neural tube, and it's hollow during embryonic development. So, bam. All right. The notochord is a rod-like structure between the nerve cord and the digestive tract. And it gives rise to the intervertebral discs. So, when everyone talks about the discs between vertebrae in your back, like, oh, my mom has a slipped disc or somebody has a slipped disc, those discs are actually pads of cartilage that help cushion the bones in your spine, the vertebra in your spine. And the notochord is what gives rise to those pads. So let's take a look at a notochord for you. So here's another picture of the plate development, and there's the notochord there. And this notochord, let's take a look here in this organism. We can see the neural tube is the solid line along the top there. Then the notochord is this segmented line along there. And then in us, the notochord becomes intervertebral disc. So here's another picture. This is the half of the digestive system right here. This is the notochord. And this is the neural tube. And let's take a look at what that notochord develops into. Roll. So this is your spinal column in a bony animal. What's left of our notochord became these discs, this little lighter white colored stuff between the individual vertebrae. So that's an intervertebral disc. And that's derived from the notochord. So that's pretty neat. Okay. What the? I have to go back now. All right, so that's the notochord. Then we have the pharyngeal gill slits. All chordates at some point during their life cycle have gill slits. We are a chordate. During embryonic development, we have gill slits, and these are grooves in the pharynx. The pharynx is the sort of the tube here that connects your nose to your mouth and then connects up to the lungs and the esophagus right there. That's the pharynx, and there are pharyngeal gill slits just behind the mouth, and there are little grooves in the pharynx. In fish, they become the gills. In terrestrial species, they straight up disappear during embryonic development. So let's do this. Human pharyngeal slits. Let's see if we can find our pharyngeal gill slits. There's a really old picture. There's a nice artistry of it. So this is a fish, which is a chordate. Here's a reptile, which is a chordate. Here's a bird, and here's a human. And these are the pharyngeal gill slits in all of them. In fish, they'll become the actual gills. In reptiles, birds, and humans, they disappear, and we develop lungs instead. So that's pretty neat. Let's see. That's not it. Oh, here's a nice picture of an actual embryo. And these pharyngeal arches are along those slits there. So, bam. That's pretty cool. And then if you want to see what they become, here we go. Here's the arches that the slits are between. So the arches are the flesh around the slits, and one of the arches will develop into the bones of your jaw. One of the arches develops into what's called your hyoid bone. And then we have some that become cartilage around your pharynx here. So they become nerves as well. Arch 1 becomes part of your facial nerves there, and other nerves there. So that's kind of neat. But again, you just have to know that all chordates have pharyngeal gill slits at some point. And then all chordates have a post-anal tail. That means that they have a tail that extends past the anus. Up until now, the tip of the tail of an organism was the site of its anus. But in chordates, the tail goes past the anus. So that's pretty neat. So if we go back to, human development here, we can see there's a limb bud, and then there's a post-anal tail. So all chordates, even if they don't have it as an adult, at some point during their life cycle, have a post-anal tail. So there we go. Again, here's our human, and there's a limb bud right here, and there's a post-anal tail. So pharyngeal gill slits, post-anal tail, notochord that gives rise to the intervertebral discs in vertebrates, animals with bones, and then the dorsal hollow nerve cord that gives rise to the spinal cord and brain. These are the 4 qualities that are specific to chordates. All chordates have all 4 things at some point in their life cycle. So that's pretty neat. Here is a very, very simple chordate with a brain connected to a dorsal hollow nerve cord, an individual notochord, little muscles along there. There's our anus. And so this is extending past the anus, making it our post-anal tail. Then here's our pharyngeal gill slits. All chordates stem from marine ancestry. So there are invertebrate chordates. Invertebrate chordates do not have a spine. They don't have bones, per se. They have no spinal cord and no bones. And these include the tunicates, which are sea squirts. And these are little immobile filter feeders. And then there's also the lancelets, which are free-living filter feeders. And finally, what we call the agnathans, which are hagfish. And they have a cranium, they have a skull, but they don't have a jaw, and they don't have any bones past the skull. So that's kind of weird. So we call them invertebrate because they don't have vertebra past their cranium. They just have bones for their cranium, their skull, but no jaw bones. So that's kind of neat. These are tunicates. So believe it or not, these are chordates. The larval form resembles a lancelet much more than the adult form. So this is an adult tunicate. And the larval form is going to look a lot more like this. This is a lancelet. And while it's not all that visible here, this lancelet is this picture. This is your standard little chordate. And the lancelet and the larval tunicate will look a lot like this. And then down here is our agnathan, our hagfish, which has a very rudimentary set of bones for its skull, but no jaw, no spinal, or no bones in the spinal cord there. So let's take a look. Let's see if we can get a better picture of a lancelet. Here we go. Here are some lancelets. So you can see looks an awful lot like that picture. There's another lancelet, and here's a lancelet in somebody's hand. So they're all sorts of adorable, and they share a common ancestor with us, much more closely related to us than, say, an echinoderm, a starfish, or an arthropod. So that's kind of neat. So that's a lancelet. All right. Now, let's look at the full-on vertebrates. And these are animals with an internal skeleton, which means they have muscles attached to bones. They never have any kind of shell. So all their support structure is internal. And so, first in the vertebrates are the fish. And we separate the fish into several different categories. One of the first is the jawless fishes. Now, the jawless fishes includes the one exception to the fish being full-on vertebrates, and that's that hagfish are, in fact, a a jawless fish. They have enough qualities in common with a fish to be classified as a fish. They're an agnathan, class Agnatha. But they're not true vertebrates. So that's kind of interesting. And then we also have lampreys, which have no jaw, but have much more well-developed skeletons. Then we have the cartilaginous fishes, and these include sharks, rays, and skates. And then we have the bony fishes, which are all other fish that you can think of. So let's look at the jawless fish. First up is class Agnatha, the hagfish, which isn't a true vertebrate. They're invertebrate, but they do have a cranium. They have a skull, so they have bones around their skull. They have no jaw, and they secrete an extremely sticky slime as a defense against predation. It's kind of neat. Then we have the lamprey, which are vertebrates, and some are parasitic. So this is a hagfish that's secreted its slime, and you can see she's able to, like, it just releases something in the water that causes the water to turn to this thick, sticky, strong slime right there. And there's no bones inside this hagfish except around the cranium right here at the head. And there's no jaw. And then this is a lamprey. The bottom two pictures are lampreys. And these are bony, these fish have bones to them. They have a more developed skeleton, but they still don't have a jaw. As you can see, considering the lamprey's mouth is highly reduced to sort of an oral sucker. It's really easy to see in these lamprey that they have very primitive gills. Instead of like a fish, they have that covering there that they can open and shut there. Or sharks, they have those slits there that can sort of move a little in the water. Lampreys just have holes that lead to their gills. So very simple fish. Next up is the cartilaginous fish, class Chondrichthyes. Chondrichthyes is a really cool vertebrate. We call them cartilaginous fish because instead of hard calcium-based mineralized skeletons like the rest of bony fish and every other vertebrate there is, cartilaginous fish have a skeleton made of cartilage. They have jaws, as you'd know, because sharks, and well, what's the shark you think of? Jaws? Oh, what? Anyway, the bones are made of cartilage, and that's kind of interesting. It makes them extremely flexible. Very springy, very flexible. So very cool. Sharks, skates, and rays fall under class Chondrichthyes. And they're the first time we see the development of what we call the lateral line system. The lateral line system looks kind of like, if you look at the fish as a whole, a lot of fish look like they have sort of a line running along the middle of their back. Sometimes it's a spot where you can see a color change in the fish. But all fish tend to have some kind of visible line running along their side. Now, if you look at the side of a fish, there's a line. And we call that line the lateral line system. If you were to look microscopically along that line, there's a whole bunch of little pores along that line. In each pore is a little hair-like structure there. And that hair-like structure moves when there's water movement around that pore. And so the lines, all these pores with hairs running along the fish, can tell the fish where there's water movement along its side. And this is one of the ways fish are able to school together. They can come up, and this fish with its lateral line can sense that there's a fish here. Because when this fish is moving its tail, this fish is moving its tail, they're moving the water. And the water hits those pores and hits that little hair, and the hair says, there's water movement here. There's something near me. So they have motion sensing, which is really cool. Senses water pressure and current. So it's very neat. Let's see. Here are some sharks. And you can see in these sharks, there's a distinct color change along that lateral line. which makes it really easy to point out. In the drawings, they put the lateral line down quite nicely. These are cartilaginous fish here. This is a manta ray. Manta rays are awesome. This is a stingray. Stingrays, rays have a spine on their tail that they can stab with. It's for defense. And skates do not have a spine. So this is a little marine ray here. And this is actually a river stingray, which is pretty cool. So cartilaginous fish. Your go-to example is going to be the shark, because everybody knows the shark.